Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining me on this Tuesday. We switch it up. We're not going Wednesday. We're going to preview the first four matchups of the NCAA Tournament, college basketball's kickoff. Two games really for the 11 seeds, and of course the two other games having 16 seed implications. That'll be held in Dayton, Ohio, starting this Tuesday. And Wednesday, of course, that'll kick off the field of 68. They'll advance whoever comes out of these games into the field of 64, have to take that quick flight wherever they're off to for their round of 64 matchup. So we'll cover all that as March Madness kicks off. And of course, two ACC teams in these first four games. So you have SMU, you have NC State. We'll have Noah Fleischman on as the Wolfpacker of On3 is covering NC State's run in the NCAA tournament right now. We'll have Noah join us at 8:20 a.m. Central Time and 9:20 a.m. Eastern Time. For those of you joining us in the Eastern Time Zone, we appreciate all of you guys tuned in here on this Tuesday morning. A little surprise episode. I thought, look, we'll preview first four. Then we'll come back Thursday, recap it all, see if we have two ACC teams advancing through to the round of 64. Look at the rest of the weekend action as, again, like I said on Monday, one of the best stretch of days in the sports calendar, truthfully, is March Madness. This first weekend. I mean, I'm partial to the Masters. You've got the Masters. You usually have the Final Four kind of hanging around that week. I think this year we have the Final Four leading into Masters Week. And then the Frozen Four, hockey guy here, you also have that around that time with the Masters, Final Four, all of that. And of course, spring football's revved up and raring to go and already in play for a lot of teams around the country. So we also have football conversation. NHL playoffs starting. I don't know. I think Masters weekend is kind of like the pinnacle of the sports calendar. Maybe a golf pun in there with pinnacle, but you do have this first weekend of March Madness that is just one of the best. So we're going to cover it for you guys here on All Access AM. Please do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Help us out as we grow this channel for ACC fans everywhere. It is ACC pretty much all the time. We'll delve into some of the bigger picture things across the country, and especially with the NCAA tournament, just talking March Madness as a whole. But when you get to this time of year with 8 ACC teams in the tournament, you hope that you see eight ACC teams into the round of 64 at least. The storylines can be endless. So we'll have tons of conversation around that this episode. We'll get Noah on here in about 15 minutes, of course, but we'll also kind of scatter shoot a little bit on spring football conversations, some storylines that I'm watching. Virginia Tech opens spring football today, so they get going in their new era of the James Franklin time there in Blacksburg. And so a lot of conversation going to be around that. We'll have to catch up with our buddy David Cunningham, who covers Virginia Tech at some point too, to get his initial thoughts on Tech as they get going in this new era. The big questions, the big storylines that everybody's talking about with James Franklin is he's really, I think, and I guess I'll talk about this in a little bit more, but you can't tell me that James Franklin coming to the ACC, one, hasn't raised the profile already of Virginia Tech. And just from a legitimacy standpoint, just from a national conversation, and I'll touch on that and my thoughts on James Franklin, because you do have somebody who just has added to the really quality coaching pool that I think the ACC has as a whole. So really good things going there in Blacksburg. We'll touch on that in our spring storylines after we talk with Noah Fleischman. But before we do that, do want to remind you guys that our Wednesday show, of course, is presented by our friends at OPW Solutions. OPW Solutions is where, if you're in the North Texas, if you're in the Oklahoma, if you're in the Arkansas region, you can get help with your business in the commercial services space, whether it be commercial landscaping, power washing, snow and ice control, parking lot painting, or just services in general for cracks and striping, all of those things. Christmas light planning ahead, fence maintenance. OPW Solutions can help you through all of that. They're licensed, insured, all of the things that you need for a partner to make sure your business from the exterior is looking shipshape. That's what OPW Solutions can provide. So make sure you guys reach out to them today. Their number is 214-444-2305 or email them info@opwsolutions.com. Again, commercial landscaping, pressure washing, snow and ice control, fence, concrete repair, and more. We appreciate our friends at OPW Solutions for supporting us here on All Access AM. Inching closer as well, if you want to be a supporter of All Access AM just in general, kind of help us keep the lights on, maybe upgrade the camera equipment. Maybe you want to see a different angle of myself. No, I'm kidding. But we will have memberships available. So you'll be able to kind of ask super chat questions, all of those things here very shortly. We're kind of closing in on that. All the hours that you guys have watched of All Access AM, YouTube is very close, probably by the end of March Madness, to saying, good job. Here's your ability to offer some membership. So we'll offer a very, very small membership that will allow you guys to support the channel, which we appreciate as we continue to grow this and look as this thing goes on. Who knows where it takes us, but excited to have that offering here very, very soon. Let's jump into March Madness. SMU starts on Wednesday. NC State, though, kicks us off on Tuesday. But we will have Noah Fleischman here in about 10 minutes talk about the NC State Wolfpack, Will Wade, all of that. So I don't want to steal any thunder from him. So let's do this. We're gonna talk SMU Miami, Ohio in this one that is set for Wednesday night. And I know people are gonna be like, okay, all right, that's out of order. But you know what? We do have the expert coming on, Noah Fleischman, in just a few minutes. So I do want to let him largely talk about the Wolfpack and where things stand there. By the way, as an aside, Aiden Holloway, Alabama guard, getting arrested on for a pound of marijuana. Interested to see how Nate Oates, noted disciplinarian, is going to handle that. The NCAA tournament, that's just really one of the early storylines. We had Bruce Pearl. Well, the Alabama side said can't have all the attention on an Auburn guy. So just fascinating stuff. Can't believe that stuff happens when you're so close to making a move into what is the most important time of the year for your team. Anyway, SMU takes on Miami, Ohio. Miami of Ohio, number 2 team in the country in terms of scoring. Just an unbelievable offense. 87.2 points per game is what they're averaging. They've won most of their games by double digits with their scoring margin. On the flip side, though, I mean, one of the worst defensive teams in the country too. 227th in points given up. Their opponents are able to move the basketball around. They get good looks. I think for me, this is a team that when you try to dissect this matchup between SMU and Miami of Ohio, it's okay, which one is going to give, right? They're both poor defensively. They're both great offensively most nights. But is it going to be the kind of lights out shooting percentage that we see from Miami of Ohio that's going to take the cake here? Or is it going to be the offensive production that SMU has as a whole? And are they going to be able to exploit Miami of Ohio's lack of size? Because Miami of Ohio, they're gonna shoot the lights out. They're going to have that type of feeling. They're going to be playing in front of a home crowd. It's going to be electric in there for the Redhawks. But for SMU, they've been battle tested. They've been through the ACC. They've scheduled 4 SEC teams. You could probably go down the list of all the opponents SMU's played, and you can see why the net in terms of these two teams, SMU at 37, Miami of Ohio at 64, Ken Palm at 42 for SMU, Miami of Ohio 93, BPI 42, 93, just strength of schedule 58th, 339th, out of conference schedule, strength of schedule 190th to 363. All of these different, just metrics and rankings are pointing to SMU. On the flip side, wins above the bubble, Miami of Ohio kind of has SMU, But that's really one of the interesting things in this whole situation is lack of experience in that area for Miami of, having that type of a challenging area of their schedule. And that's what led them to being 31-1 as a whole, being able to be that elite of a program in the regular season. On the flip side, SMU doesn't have a bad loss. Miami of Ohio's loss is a quad four loss in the MAC tournament. So that's their lone loss. SMU was undefeated in quad three, quad four games. What gives here? Because we've seen SMU give up so many incredible scoring performances from teams on their schedule. If you go down the list of the regular season, and in particular late without BJ Edwards, they lost 91-78 to FSU. Miami, they kind of stepped up at home, 77-69, 95-75 at Stanford, 73-69 against Cal. They go out and they're able to hold Boston College 94-70. Louisville was a shootout, 95-85. Syracuse, they were down around 79-78 loss. But as you look at this team defensively for SMU, a lot of it is rotations. A lot of it is kind of getting lost in the mix. And are you going to see Miami of Ohio's sharpshooting step up? And they're going to get open looks. Like, I'd be very surprised if SMU was able to bring it from the defensive perspective that Miami of Ohio is going to be ice cold. I just would be surprised. But on the flip side of that is SMU's size and athleticism going to give itself the opportunity to get just enough stops to, one, use their size advantage on the offensive side to grab second chance opportunities. Miami of Ohio, like, decent rebounding team. But again, is that a product of the schedule? Is that a product of the is that a product of the programs that you face? Because you're top 50 in rebounding, defensively, and you're able to do a decent job there, but it's not a part of their game in a sense too, because they're so good at shooting the basketball. SMU, they're one of the just like good teams in the country on both ends of the floor. So when you look at Samet Yigitolu, 7'2", Jaden Toombs, 6'11", 7 foot, the size that SMU brings, even if they maybe deploy a Mitchell Holmes for an extended period of time, those types of bigs in the paint facing against, Miami of Ohio's big man is 6'9". That is a major, that is probably one of the most important pieces of this puzzle, because when SMU gives up second chance points, it gets lost in rotation. Teams get open looks, and you can bet that Miami is going to hit those. The Red Hawks are going to. You don't give a team that has that much ability to shoot the basketball second chance opportunities. They're top 10 in effective field goal percentage. They're just that good in that space. And, for their efficiency, they're top 5. They do so many things well that you have to rebound the ball, and you can't give second chance points. And that's going to be one of the tails of the tape here. And is SMU's overall ability to use what they've learned throughout this ACC schedule, throughout their out of conference schedule, and show up, be ready to play in a tough environment, and show why they're one of the teams that, one, made the field, two, if that backcourt is rolling, could be really fun. Could Boopy Miller become a shining moment guy? Could Jerron Pierre Jr. become one of the faces and intriguing almost villains of this NCAA tournament? Those are things that I'm asking, because we know that NC State has its fair share of villains already on the roster that people are going to point to and want to take shots at if they get into it, into the round of 64. So SMU will have to face a Miami of Ohio team that has 6 players in double figure scorings that's going to be available. 7 on the year, 1 out for the year. Evan Ipsaro tore his ACL in December. But Peter Suter is the MAC player of the year. He averages 14.6 points per game, 4 assists per game, 2 turnovers, pretty steady player. And, got rewarded for that with his MAC player of the year. Travis Steele, MAC coach of the year. They've got things on the right direction here, and they'll have a lot, of reasons to feel good about facing SMU that gives up the amount of 3-point opportunities that they do. But again, do you see I don't want to call it will versus skill because SMU plays hard. They just are kind of lost in some of their transitions and things that they do on the floor that really can drive you nuts if you're a fan watching it. But you do have such a sharp shooting, impressive team in Miami of Ohio that they're going to be in the right spots. They're going to hit their shots that are open, and SMU's skill, in a sense, is going to have to outweigh that type of shooting performance by being able to grab rebounds, eliminating second chance opportunities. And when SMU can grab those rebounds and get out and run a little bit too, those are things that can really help Boopy Miller get into a groove early. And then, of course, the X factor, BJ Edwards. Will he play for the Mustangs? I think he does. I think he's available. How does he look? How much can he do? That's the question we're all going to be watching Wednesday night around 8 p.m. Central Time in Dayton, Ohio, as the Mustangs will take on the Miami Redhawks. In just a moment, we'll get to our next guest, and that is Noah Fleischman of the Wolfpacker on 3. But before we do that, I do want to remind you guys, we're also presented by our friends at the La La Land Foundation. And the La La Land Foundation is an incredible way for you to get involved and get involved with a charity that means a lot to the future of this country, to how we can help each other grow into different phases of life. And you do that through kindness. And the La La Land Foundation is all about helping foster care youth transition into adulthood and understanding kind of what is next. What are you supposed to be doing as you get into adulthood? And there are so many ways to help people that are going through that transition, because it's not easy for everybody. And it certainly comes with challenges. And that's what the La La Land Foundation is here for. So go to lalalandfoundation.com. You can go to their ways to get involved page. Monetary donations, in-kind donations, corporate sponsorships are something they're certainly looking for as well. You can volunteer by becoming a mentor, and you can share your experiences, share the conversation with some of these young adults that are moving into life and the real world, so to speak. So make sure you guys check that out. The La La Land Foundation. We're very proud to be partnered with them and all that they do. So make sure you guys visit the La La Land Foundation, lalalandfoundation.com today. We're very excited to now be joined on the show by Noah Fleischman of the Wolfpacker. I assume, Noah, you are coming from a stock hotel room background here in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah, that I am. Nice cold morning in Dayton, Ohio.
Stay away from the snow that I think is coming on Wednesday. Hopefully you get out with not only a win, but able to get out of there and on to the next round and destination just fine. But look, let's go back to Selection Sunday. Will Wade, NC State, similar to Texas, wasn't exactly how anybody drew up their finish to their season. But I don't think many people had NC State falling all the way to the first four. I know at the wolfpacker.com, Will Wade with the quote on the front page, "We got what we deserve." Is that what NC State deserved? Is this appropriate? And how do you think the team has reacted to being in Dayton?
Yeah, on Selection Sunday, he didn't think that they would end up in this spot. He said he gave himself a 30% chance of being in Dayton. They thought they'd be firmly in the field. But it was what it was. Will said he was shocked by it, but at the same time said, you know what? If they win a couple games down the stretch, they're not in this situation. They lost at Notre Dame, a team that didn't make the ACC tournament. That game is the one that really killed them the most, I think. They did lose in Miami, a game they were winning by 7 with a minute left. So they got what they deserved in the sense that Will said, you take care of business, you're not in this situation. They didn't, and now they got to play for their lives here tonight in Dayton. But they got a sense of urgency. They got a chip on their shoulder, and they think that they'll wake them up a little bit to win a game tonight.
This stretch for NC State, what are some of the key things that led to that faltering down the stretch that put them in this situation, and what do they have to do to correct some of those things?
Yeah, just being the most inconsistent team in America, I think. This is a team that can play with good teams, and they've proven it. It's also a team that can play down to the level of competition. They kind of didn't take it seriously in a way, is what a lot of guys were telling me yesterday. Especially at Notre Dame, they kind of went in there thinking they were going to get a win, and well, the Irish who never led in regulation, won in overtime. So that was a game that really, we're going to keep coming back to and talk about. But that's the thing. It's really defensive effort is what it comes down to. When they try to play defense, they're a really good team. When they don't, they lose the game. They can score, and that's not a problem at all. It's more about not letting the other team score. And Texas is a team that can score in bunches too. That also doesn't play defense. These two teams played in Maui, and it was a 102-97 game. So don't think we'll see that high scoring, but defense will be the factor in this one tonight.
I was shocked to see them do the rematch here. I thought we were going to get an NC State, Miami of Ohio matchup with SMU, Texas playing a little Southwest Conference matchup, but you get the rematch. What's been Will's message on the rematch and just what that means for this one in that sense?
Yeah, they're not putting too much stock into that first result because it was the third game in 3 days in Maui. It was tired legs. You're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Yes, they can learn some stuff from that film, but they don't put too much stock in that game. They felt like they should have won the game, but they don't. That game also was in November. It was almost 5 months ago now. So they can take some stuff from it, but at the same time, it's more of they're using that as hey, Texas can hit threes. They hit 16 threes in that game. So there's not going to be a surprise, the team in the scale. They don't really have to tell them anymore. They know what Texas can do. And I think that will help. But yeah, it is weird having a rematch when there was a chance for them not to. But I do think it's a bonus not having to play Miami of Ohio. SMU will find out on tomorrow. But it's probably going to be a home game for Miami of Ohio at Dayton. I mean, that's like 30 minutes away. So otherwise, I think they did avoid that in playing Texas, a team that, shouldn't travel as many as Miami of Ohio will.
Kadir Copeland, I had him on my first team all ACC ballot. He gets to match up against Jordan Pope, another very, very strong veteran point guard there. But the size advantage that Copeland's going to have, guarding Pope, that seems like a storyline to watch. You look at this roster that Will Wade's put together. There's going to be some size advantages elsewhere, really, for Texas in a sense. But what's kind of the feeling athletically and physically as this one, gets matched up on paper?
Yeah, they think they can hang with them pretty well. Copeland is a 6'6" point guard, not your average point guard. And he wasn't really in this spot when they played Texas the first time. He was kind of, playing as like a 1 or 2 guard with Trey Holman playing the other spot. Well, they fixed that, and he's been playing point guard basically the rest of the way. So I think that'll be interesting to see what Texas decide to do on that. But, Jordan Pope's a good player. He hit 7 threes on NC State last time out, and they're going to hopefully try to limit him to less than that, and that's how I think they're going to win the game.
And with this Texas team, what's your feeling having maybe watched some of them a little bit and how their players and coaches have kind of reacted to making the first 4 and landing in the NCAA tournament? Do you see any kind of differences as far as how these teams are reacting, or they're all kind of saying the same thing?
Yeah, I think they're pretty similar. Both teams struggled down the stretch. I mean, both teams a month ago or maybe a month and a half ago, you think you're playing for a single-digit seed in the tournament. Now you're playing Dayton, right now. So they're both figuring it out the same way. Texas was here last year in the first 4, lost to, its current coach and Sean Miller, who was at Xavier at the time. So Texas has the experience in this game. NC State doesn't, but it's going to come down to just playing basketball.
Yeah, the urgency that Will Wade has talked about and the veteran group that he assembled for this season. I think obviously it worked out for the most part. So, sans the end of the regular season, this is a team that has been able to kind of, I think, jumpstart this NC State program. They've done a lot of good getting it into the obviously NCAA tournament. But now this is that time where every second matters, every ounce of energy that you can give can be the difference between winning and losing. Will kind of honed in on that with the sand in the hourglass reference. What's your feeling on how the players are taking, what could be their last game each and every time they step on the floor here in March?
Yeah, they're taking it well. This is going to prove whether or not Will's roster construction strategy worked, which was get players that played in the tournament 1 games last year. They've got 399 minutes that are on the team that played in games last year, led by Darian Williams, who was at Texas Tech, Terrence Arson at Houston, keep going down, Copeland at McNeese. So these are guys that have played in these big games before. So that should come in to actually be helpful for them this year. Venon Lubin was at North Carolina, who also played in the first 4 last year. So they're going to lean on tournament experience. And it showed up a little bit last week at the ACC tournament. They played a lot better than they had the month before. They beat Pitt. They hung with Virginia, a team that beat them by a combined 44 points in their first 2 meetings, only lost by 7. Was a game that was really a game to the last 90 seconds or so. So they're going to lean on the experience and hope that can pay off in a do or die game against Texas, because now every game they play, it's a 1-game season. and they don't want their season to end. They'd rather, get on a plane headed to Portland rather than getting on a plane going back to Raleigh after tonight's game.
Yeah, I was about to say, what do you make of the draw if they're able to get by Texas?
I do think whoever wins tonight's game will win on Thursday night against BYU. BYU's just banged up. Yes, they have AJ Devanza, but he can't score 100 points himself. If he does, then congrats to him. So this is going to be a game that's going to decide who's going to play Gonzaga, I think. It's just going to come down to that. I do think whoever wins tonight, Texas or NC State, can beat BYU on Thursday night in the late night game in Portland.
Is there any buzz in Raleigh around, the LSU job potentially opening, or is that kind of subsided now?
Will put an end to it at the ACC tournament, basically saying he's talked to NC State about what he wants to do next year. They're behind him. Yesterday, he made a comment. Somebody just asked him about the coaching transition from McNeese to NC State. And he'd mentioned, we've done this 5 times, throughout his whole career. They're used to the whole moving. He's got a family. They're used to it. But he did note he doesn't want to do it anymore. So I think that's a big sign showing where he is right now. LSU's job isn't even open yet. If it were to open, would they be interested? Possibly, but I don't think at this moment he would be interested in going back.
Yeah, that would be just fascinating. I mean, the rumor mill, it's tough to deal with, but Will certainly will shoot it as straight as he can when all that is going on. And look, tonight's matchup, it's going to be a fun one. NC State, Texas. What's your prediction on how this one plays out?
Yeah, I still think it's a toss-up. Somebody asked me this yesterday. I couldn't really pick, but I do think it comes down to this, whether NC State plays defense or it doesn't. If it does, it's going to win the game. It's just flat out going to win the game. If they don't defend and it gets into a high-scoring affair, I don't think they can keep up with Texas and what it can do. So if they can play this game in the 70s or 80s, they should win. If this game gets into the 90s, then they're probably going to lose. I think it's going to come down to that, and we'll see what happens tonight. But, Dick Vitale and Charles Barkley on the call. You can't get anything better than that.
Yeah, I know. SMU doesn't get Dick or Charles on the call, I don't think, for tomorrow. I think they might have Charles, but I know I saw Dick Vitale wasn't on it. But, man, talk about some favoritism there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we'll see what Charles Barkley says about Auburn. Auburn did beat NC State this year. They're not in the tournament. Maybe we'll hear that on the broadcast today. But Dick Vitale, big NC State guy with his relationship with Jimmy V.
Yeah, we haven't heard enough Auburn talk this week, so we'll need more of it. Do want to flip to football real quick, though. Teddy Hoffman gets suspended for the 2026 season. Wide receiver on the team who had a decent-sized role, it looked like, in the offense last year, almost 400 yards. 1-year suspension for NCAA rules with performance-enhancing supplements. What's the reaction? What does it mean for the NC State Wolfpack and for CJ Bailey?
Yeah, NC State already lost its top 4 receivers from a year ago due to either eligibility exhausting or transfer portal. He was the leading receiver coming back, and obviously he had a chance to take a step into that bigger role. 400 yards a year ago, a couple of touchdowns, easily could have been around a 700, 800 yard receiver this year with a breakout season. So he can't play this year. It should, I believe, cost him a year of eligibility from being suspended by the NCAA. It's an automatic suspension, and it's nothing that the NCAA decided to do because he plays for NC State or anything like that. If you test positive, you're sitting for a year, and that's what he's going to have to deal with. But NC State moving forward, it brought 5 transfer portal receivers in, including Josiah Trader from Miami is the headlining guy. They're going to need these guys to hit now. You've got one returning scholarship player that has yards to his name from a year ago, and Keenan Jackson. The next closest receiver was a walk-on with 25 yards. So it's going to be big spring and summer coming up for this wide receiver room to get figured out and trying to replace Teddy Hoffman, because he was, I think, due for a really big year in the ACC.
When does NC State get spring going? Is it next week? Are they on spring break this week?
They're currently underway right now. They are on spring break, so they're paused, but they'll finish up at the end of the month. So they've got a couple more weeks once they get back from spring break this week.
Initial impressions on how the Wolfpack are looking so far. We'll get you out of here.
We've only talked to Dave Dorn once this spring. He hasn't not too much media access so far with everything and 15 new players and things like that. But he's been impressed with what he's seen so far from when we talked with him. We obviously haven't talked to him since Teddy Hoffman's suspension, so that might change kind of what he thinks to the offense a little bit going with CJ Bailey in his 3rd season. But overall, they like the way they're trending with all these newcomers, especially on defense. And I think that's going to be important. We talked about that, a few weeks ago about the defense being a big part of the portal. And so far, so good on those guys. So we'll see what happens the rest of the way here before they get ready for fall camp in the summertime.
Well, we're looking forward to March Madness kicking off with Texas, NC State in the first 4 in Dayton. Noah Fleischman, appreciate the time this morning.
Yeah, thanks, Billy. Appreciate it.
There he goes, Noah Fleischman. Thanks for joining us on All Access AM, giving us the goods on the Wolfpack taking on the Longhorns. Fun one tonight. Again, that's going to be 8-ish p.m. Central Time for you guys here in the Central Time Zone. Of course, the late tip time, 9-ish in the Eastern Time Zone. That's tough. Feel for you guys, but look, you got to power through. It's March Madness, so make sure you guys are tuned in to watch the first of two ACC teams in the first four take the floor tonight. So looking forward to watching that one this evening and appreciate Noah for all the insight around that one. I think for the most part, what Noah said is just so true. Defensively, that's where NC State has lacked the consistency, lacked the ability at times this year to really step up and get stops and be engaged on defense. And truthfully, I mean, this is what I saw a lot of with Will Wade's teams at LSU. You'd get games where they'd be outstanding and they would be all locked in, and this is kind of part of the portal era in a sense, but in particular now, but also just some of those teams and how he recruits, because Will's kind of foundation is a lot of it has been built around, okay, if guys are playing well offensively, and this is a little bit of new school and kind of how a lot of coaches nowadays kind of think in a sense. But if you get the guys going as far as feeling good about where they're at from an offensive perspective and the shots are falling, they're going to be more engaged. They're going to be locked in because they're going to be more confident. And that's when you see those teams step up and those teams make that type of a move. From a defensive perspective is when your shots are falling, you're locked in. You want to get the ball back. You'll see somebody make a shot and clap as they get ready to play defense. It's just a different era that we live in and watch. And so, for these NC State teams that he's going to have, a lot of it's going to be built on, okay, how can you get the offense going? Because, Will Setz, I mean, he's just one of the bright basketball minds in the college game right now. And I think his ability to get the most out of his roster, because he's so analytically driven from a numbers perspective, as far as all the different goals that they break down numbers wise each and every time that they go on the floor. I mean, it's so important to them, and it's kind of a non-negotiable, I remember him always talking about the deflection goals that they'd have each game, because if you hit X number of deflections, it meant that the other team scoring dropped below X percentage, when those teams are frustrated by deflections or steals or some of those different things. So he kind of quantifies some of those things for players. And that's what he's going to have tonight, as him and Sean Miller are going to get after it. I mean, two of the more interesting personalities on a sideline to watch. I mean, it's going to be fun. I really wish we had the suit games back and rolling in college basketball. It drives me absolutely up a wall that coaches don't wear suits like they used to. I know some do. We get a lot of that, but man, bring the suits back, please. It's exhausting. We know that Nike or Adidas or whoever you're sponsored by can make very comfortable quarter zips and joggers, and the tennis shoes are comfortable. But you know what? Dress up a little bit. Let's see some suits. You guys get paid a lot of money for the clothing designers to hook you up with a good suit. So I wish we were seeing Sean Miller and Will Wade jump around in their suits a little bit, see a jacket go flying, what have you. But we're not going to get that tonight. But it'll be two of the more intriguing sideline personalities in college basketball. And we'll see if Will Wade's on the right side of it. It'd be big for the ACC to knock down Texas and get that rolling. So going to be a fun one in the first four in Dayton. Of course, Wednesday night, SMU, NC State, or SMU, Miami of Ohio. I do think, kind of similarly to NC State, if SMU can get some stops early, if they can get an efficient start to their first four experience with a Boopy Miller or a Jaron Pierre Jr. bringing it, that's going to help them kind of lock in a little bit better on the defensive side of the floor. If they do that, I think athletically that skill will take over. And it's just a matter of being able to close the door on Miami of Ohio. Because when you have a team that can shoot the way Miami of Ohio can, they're not going to be out of it until very, very late. So you're going to have to make sure that if you get into that danger zone again, like we talked about with SMU getting up on Louisville by 6, we saw SMU get up in certain points over this losing streak. and like the Cal game and tying it, I think, against Miami, and they just weren't ever able to like kind of close the door and take that next step. So if you're watching SMU tonight or tomorrow and you're seeing that danger zone for the other team approach, watch how SMU doubles down. See if they're able to close the door. If not, it's going to be a battle right to the end. We've seen it play out. This SMU team is kind of a little all over the place since they lost BJ Edwards, but they're also kind of predictable in that sense too because of that inconsistency. So it's a new season. It's a clean slate for NC State, for SMU, for Texas, for Miami of Ohio. See which teams show up in Dayton in the first four and advance to the round of 64. So do have a few more things to close out the show with. I know we're a ways away from closing it out, but you look at some of the teams that can make a deep run. You look at Duke. The praise for Cam Boozer continues to rain down. I think that's been big for the ACC as far as just having that continued added publicity. Duke is Duke. I know it's not surprising to anybody. A lot of people on this podcast who probably follow it are probably, as ACC fans, tired of Duke. But this time of year, it's important that Duke goes, as far as they can. And with a Player of the Year candidate, it just helps. So the ACC, that well-roundedness between football and basketball, very important that they complement that and go deep. So Cam Boozer continues to get praise. Seth Greenberg said most mature freshman I've ever seen. So looking forward to seeing him in action as Cam Boozer and Duke will look to advance and get their first win this week in the NCAA tournament against Siena. Could be an interesting one. But Cam Boozer is going to have to step up in a big way with some of the injuries for Duke. So looking forward to following that. Appreciate Tom Riddell for chiming in. Rough game choice. I really wanted to see Miami go far, but SMU is my ride or die. Assuming you might be up in the Ohio area, Tom, maybe. Appreciate you chiming in the chat. If so, but yes, if SMU is your ride or die, hopefully you're riding for a while then, because SMU has not won an NCAA tournament game since 1988. So they're looking to get on the right side of that and advance and get this thing rolling in the right direction. Andy Enfield and his staff, they got this team to sneak in. It's largely built on the metrics with BJ Edwards. Will he be available? Will he be able to play? That's the wild card. If he does give them minutes, that's huge. It's huge for their rotation. That's huge for their confidence. And we'll see how it plays out in Wednesday's matchup. I want to close out with kind of talking about one job opening on the basketball side of things. That's Syracuse. Syracuse is in an interesting position. Syracuse did hire Toledo AD Byron Blair as its next athletic director, getting to now make the hire or not Byron Blair. Brian Blair. Sorry, excuse me. As its next AD to run the athletic department. With Brian Blair at the helm of Syracuse now, he is honing in on Brian Hodgins, the South Florida head coach who's got the Bulls in the NCAA tournament, who are going after an ACC school, Louisville, on Thursday with their afternoon tip-off. And the big thing right now for Syracuse is once USF is out, how do you convince Brian Hodgins that this is the right move for him? Because there's another team that's courting him. It's Providence. Providence out of the Big East, moved on from Kim English, and they are battling it out, it sounds like, for Brian Hodgins. One of the hot names this coaching carousel cycle, the former Alabama assistant, now at the helm of USF after being at Arkansas State. He's got a ton that is likable about him. He's got donor support at Syracuse. And we're going to have to watch it unfold and see how it goes as they look to replace Red Autry there in Syracuse. But right now, Brian Blair has a big recruiting battle to win as Syracuse takes on Providence off the floor for the right to get Brian Hodgins as its next head coach. So key battle there away from the NCAA tournament to keep an eye on as USF will look to make a splash this week in the NCAA tournament, and if not, Syracuse will hope to make a splash in the coaching carousel. So, lots to watch there away from the floor. So keep an eye on that. Let's go to spring football in the ACC, and kind of a scatter shooting this week, but Virginia Tech does open spring football, and I wanted to go back to what I was saying about James Franklin raising the profile of this league. And this is why it's so important that as the ACC goes through this new world of college football, as we talk about rev share, NIL, realignment, all the rules around athletes and eligibility and employment status and congressional involvement and roundtables and everything that's going on in college football. You have a coach in James Franklin that comes into the ACC and immediately legitimizes a program, not only because that program in Virginia Tech is spending money, but because that program in Virginia Tech is looking to elevate itself as a whole with its coaching choices. And I mean no disrespect when I look at Brent Pry. I don't think he had the resources to compete at the highest level that he needed to. But I look at what James Franklin has revitalized there in Blacksburg, and I think it is a warning shot across the bow of other ACC programs that aren't on board. And we've talked about some of these programs. We've talked about an NC State. How can you level up? We've talked about a Florida State. How can you level up? They already got somebody, pushing the pace in the state of Florida with them, with Miami and what they're doing, with Florida and what they did getting John Sumrall. You look at some of these other teams around the conference, Syracuse, Boston College is light years behind everybody else in trying to figure out this new world. But once you make that investment in that choice to be relevant, to make a move that can revitalize your fan base in ways that you still can't quantify, I think, how big of a deal it is for Virginia Tech, you're going to be behind. And so that's why the PR game for this conference, and I've said this before on the show, the PR game for the ACC is not won and lost as the college football playoff race is unfolding. It's made in the offseason. It's made in how they do certain things around their programs and building the buzz. It's made around the coaching hires that they make. It's made around the money that they spend and throw around in this sport. Because when you look at some of the teams that have invested, look at Virginia, look at Duke. Look, they didn't come out on the right side of it in a lot of the games that they played in any of the games really that they played in non-conference, but they won the ACC championship. And tiebreakers or not, you can't take that away from them. You can't take away that last offseason they were the talk of the country when they paid Darian Mensah $8 million over 2 years, or were expected to be the starting quarterback of Duke. They made those waves. They made that move. Virginia did it a little quieter, but you saw it pay off. You saw Wake Forest go out and make a really good hire in Jake Dickert. You saw UNC go out and make a interesting hire in Bill Belichick. Well, everybody talked about UNC all offseason. It looked like that first drive that everything was going to be hunky-dory there in Chapel Hill, and then it was a kind of a nightmare season for the Tar Heels. But they got people talking about him. Bill Belichick, kind of Deion Sanders-ish as far as getting people to talk about their programs. But now the next step is for some of these programs across the ACC to make that next step of commitment, to make that next step like we see at Virginia Tech, like we see at SMU, like we see at Georgia Tech. You're seeing some of those teams take that next step. I look at a Pitt, for example, and I say, how do you find a way to get a Mason Heinschel, Jakirian Turner, some of these key pieces long-term to stay? Well, they did that, but you need key pieces around them that make those programs move to that next level. How can Pitt finish what they started? Because they got the guy, they got the trigger man. Now they need to figure out all the other pieces as a program so that they're elevated. They play in an NFL stadium. They're in a big city. They got a great brand of football, being hard-nosed. They kind of got what Virginia Tech is searching for. And Virginia Tech went out and they hired the guy to lead them back to that lunch pail, the true lunch pail type of mentality. And they did it with a guy who knows how to play this modern game of NIL and roster building and all those things. And he knows how to do it in a place that nobody really should want to ever go to. Sorry, any Penn State people listening. Been there, done that. Very tough place to live outside of a Saturday with the whiteout. And even then, you know, at least the guys don't have to, bail and get out of town. But it's a really, really intriguing world that Virginia Tech is playing in right now, because you have James Franklin at the helm now. You have one of the better portal classes in the ACC, but can it take that program to the next level right away? That's what James Franklin and company is certainly hoping for. As they get going on spring practice, they have so many different spaces that they're trying to play in, and they're trying to elevate. They're trying to elevate offensively. They're trying to be that hard-nosed defensive team, and that's why Brent Pry was brought back. They have Bill Davis coming in the running back room, as he's changed his body and really stepped up. And you look at some of the players that they have in the running back room, and you think that, okay, you're going to see them, try to find a way to be that hard-nosed football team, with Bill Davis leading the way and some of the returning running backs. I think offensively they should be in a better spot with Ethan Grunkmeyer there and all of those things. They're in that spot because they invested. And I know this has now turned into a kind of larger picture thing on the ACC. But when I look at Virginia Tech, I think as a whole, we're going to learn the most about them this spring, and out of all of the ACC teams. Because when you look at Virginia Tech and how they're approaching things, and how James Franklin's a builder, and all the different ways that he's already kind of changed that program, because they're going to have a real spring game. They're going to have a really, really, I think, high level approach to going after spring and their accomplishments that they want to get on paper and get down, so that they know in the summer, hey, here's where we still have left to grow. Here's our priorities we still got to hit on. And that's where James Franklin, being at the top of this organization, this program, is going to have a really good feel for it, because he's been there, done that at multiple different programs that needed a jolt of life. He did it at Vanderbilt. He did it at Penn State after everything they went through. He did it in a way that I think has built them into a program from the top that you could see the vision, and long term it's probably going to work. It's probably going to put Virginia Tech right back into an ACC championship at some point, because we have proof of concept across now over a decade of head coaching experience that is going to put this Virginia Tech team in a good spot as they get ready for a quarterback competition, as they get ready for all these new faces. If you trust James Franklin's process, it's going to be in a good spot by the end of spring. So with Marcellus Hawkins and Bill Davis helping out their quarterbacks, I mean, you're in a good situation. So I think as you watch this Virginia Tech program, keep an eye and remember how much that they're elevating not only the Virginia Tech brand because James Franklin's there, but they're elevating the ACC. They're putting it back on the map with another program that the ACC can be proud of. And that's really important as you look across college football right now, because as you stack these small wins and you continue to build up this conference from a overall structure, overall funding, overall commitment to high level football, it'll pay off elsewhere. And that's what Virginia Tech has done. I think, again, with what seems like transparency, what seems like the most exciting kind of spring football that we are going to be evaluating over the course of the ACC. Spring footballs going on. that's where you can build the buzz for the season. That's where you can build some legitimacy if you even remotely back it up this fall for Virginia Tech. It's going to be really interesting to watch that unfold with the Hokies because they have a lot of eyes on them with James Franklin at the helm, and it's because they legitimize themselves as soon as they had that hire ready to go. When I look at Clemson, on the other hand, Clemson is the team that I think we're going to learn the least about. And the reason why I say this is because, look, I think Chad Morris and Dabo Sweeney, they mesh perfectly. They are on the same page as far as what they want. But I would offer up this. Is that a good thing? Is Dabo Sweeney and Chad Morris's relationship and their alignment on what they want Clemson football to be the best thing for Clemson football? Because I continue to think about this marriage that is now reunited, second loop, so to speak, and they've got some of the pieces that you'd want, right? They have an offensive line that, okay, there's some changes up front, there's some young talent, there's some good things happening, but they also have a revamped running back room, revamped wide receiver room to an extent. They have a new quarterback who's going to be taking over for Cade Klubnik, Christopher Vizina, who has experience. Is it Chris Denson? Is it one of the other guys? But they're going to try to operate with tempo. Chad Morris hasn't called plays in a minute, but he's been around the game a ton. I'm not saying he's been out of it. I'm not saying he's rusty, but he hasn't called plays in a minute. And then you have Tom Allen, a defensive coordinator who really hasn't dealt too much with tempo. And how do you call a game as a defensive coordinator with that tempo? Well, they revamped the secondary, which had some talent to it, but they bring in some starters. They bring in some different players to add to this front for Clemson. They're trying to revamp it just enough. And oh, by the way, they're betting a lot of that running back rebuild on SMU transfer Chris Johnson Jr., who is kind of a gadget, kind of an explosive back at times, kind of a boomer bust player, which I think is the perfect encapsulation of how Clemson could be this year. They're going to be boom or they're going to be bust. And it's kind of similar to, I covered Sonny Dykes when he was at SMU, and he did a lot of good things putting SMU back on the map. He brought in Jim Leavitt as his defensive coordinator for, I believe, what ended up being his last season at SMU. That was the Jim Leavitt defense. That was when Kevin Kane moved on and went up to Illinois to work with Brett Bielema. And you kind of looked at it and you said, okay, I see what he's doing. Jim Leavitt and him, they're really close. They always talked about working together. They're hard-nosed coaches. Jim Leavitt has a pro system, and he's had great defenses before. I see what they're doing. But by the time we were able to look back on it, we said, oh, man, okay, they did not have the personnel to run this defense. I look at similarly Clemson bringing in Chad Morris to be the offense coordinator. Do they have the personnel to run this offense? And how does it impact the defense? How does it impact the tempo that Clemson's going to play with? How does it impact the defense? If you have a 3 and out, Tom Allen's got to, look at this and say, okay, all right, I got to call this differently because we're right back out on the field. And Clemson's defense in year one under Tom Allen, they did some good things. They also had some situations that they've got to improve on as they build up that defense. Tom Allen seems to get better as he has more time. But again, you're now looking at a Tom Allen defense that has to play with an offense that he's not used to playing with and complementing. Because you're going to have to be a little bit more bend but not break. You're going to have to keep some of those things in mind because this offense for Clemson is going to be a little boomer bust. Chad Morris, I think he said something like, I want to take 10 plus shots down the field a game. So if you throw the ball 30 times a game, you're going to throw 10 of those that are deep balls. Well, are you going to be ahead of the chains? Are you going to be behind the chains? A lot of that is predicated on how much you get out of your quarterback and your wide receivers. And it's just going to be fascinating to watch. And because of all of that, because of all the change, because of all the questions, I wonder, outside of the tidbits that our guys at Tiger Illustrated and Larry Williams do an incredible job of putting together, how much are we really going to learn about Clemson this this time of year? Like, how much is Dabo Sweeney and Chad Morris? They are two of, and I mean this in a good way, they're two of the best talkers in the game. It's talking season, or it's almost talking season. It's spring ball season, so you do get some football. But man, how much are we really going to learn about Clemson? I think it's the opposite ends of the spectrum between Virginia Tech and Clemson. We're going to learn a lot about Virginia Tech, it seems like, and we're going to learn a minimal amount, I think, about Clemson. Because when the lights come on in Baton Rouge in that week 1 game, we'll get a really good feel for both of those teams, or what we think we know. Because last year, we saw how that went. Clemson lost. It was a sign of how their season was going to go. LSU won, and it wasn't a sign of how that season was going to go. Clemson is going to go into Baton Rouge, into Tiger Stadium, and have a team on the other side that is built through the portal, built through a lot of money, built through a program that has proven to be successful at Ole Miss. They're bringing it to LSU. So much change. I mean, I still talk to people at LSU. Some of the people that are there through the regime change, night and day. So you are dealing with the opposite of that at Clemson. You're dealing with a program that, yes, is going to have a change in offensive scheme, verbiage, all of those things. But your man at the top is as steady as it comes with his non-negotiables, with how he approaches building his program. And for me, watching that, it's going to be just an incredible amount of cinema, but we're going to find out everything, I think, about how Clemson could really go this year by that week 1 game. And I don't mean to pin it all on that, but it's true, I think, in this sense. What is Chad Morris going to do when Blake Baker, one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, is ready to rock and roll? We're not going to find that out this spring. And I know we're not going to find that out about a lot of teams, but man, just the way Clemson has structured its program and then adding in the changes to that recipe that they have, I think we will not find much out about Clemson until the fall. I think part of that is going to be, okay, there's a lot of talking, there's a lot of this, there's a lot of that, but we'll get the real takeaways on that program come this fall. We won't learn anything about how Clemson is going to be feeling. I really believe that, because I think there's so much that's going to be projected with Clemson. A lot of people are going to make Clemson prove it to them because of the year that they had, deservedly so. So maybe that's the one saving grace in a sense with how this is all going to be projected. I don't know what they're going to be in the preseason top 25 rankings. So I don't know if we're dealing with a top 25 matchup between LSU and Clemson. But what I can tell you is, whatever you think about Clemson, I would throw out your projections. Like, I don't think it's going to work that well. I don't think they have the quarterback to do it. I don't think they have the personnel to do it. And that's kind of where I stand on them. And I think the scheme compared to Tom Allen's side of the ball is going to be really tough to deal with that type of change. And you're going to see a lot of it play out in Tiger Stadium. So what will Dabo do? Maybe prove me wrong. I don't know. But we'll find out in that week 1 matchup. I don't think we're going to find out much in spring ball. So looking forward to kind of giving some of my thoughts as we continue to watch spring ball play out across the country now that it's back. I think there's a lot in the ACC that should be talked about more. We're going to do that on this show. We're going to have people on to talk about it, the experts in their field. And also, I like keeping track, of course, of the ACC. That's what we do here on All Access AM, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, usually. But we'll be back Thursday with our next show, 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern time, live on this YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button for me, please. And we'll break down the first 4 matchups. We'll look ahead to the weekend of action in the NCAA tournament. Will there be 8 teams in the ACC in the round of 64, or will there be 6, or will there be 7? We'll find out Tuesday and Wednesday with the first 4 matchups going on in Dayton. But appreciate you guys listening to me on the end of this, kind of going on and on about mainly Virginia Tech and Clemson. But they're 2 teams that mean so much to the ACC's brand. 2 teams, well, I would say 1 team for sure headed in one direction. I think Virginia Tech is building. one team at the fork in the road, but we'll have to wait. They've got a long way to make that decision of which way they're going to go. And they're going to show us this fall. They're not going to show us this spring. And that's Clemson. So one of the incredible storylines to follow as really the offseason unfolds is all the things that Dabo Swinney and that program share with us about what their direction is. But I still think we won't know anything until this fall about Clemson and how it all plays out. Really looking forward to following that. But appreciate all of you guys who chime in the chat and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Really appreciate you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this edition of All Access AM. We'll be back Thursday with more on All Access AM. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.